you, among others, Calvin Watkins,
amongst everyone,
Clarence Hill, Mike Fisher, Joe Trahan, all of y'all were out there, swarming. I'll use that word. Odell Beckham Jr.
Did you talk about them like they gnats? That's crazy.
I mean, the way they was flocking around, it kind of felt that way. Take me through your night and how all of that came about as you were obviously, because number one, I don't ever see you at a Mavs game, number one. But number two, how did all of your night go with trying to keep up with Odell Beckham Jr. and his travels last night?
So I go to Mavs games from time to time, but
no, you don't. No, you don't. I don't ever see you at a Mavs game. Don't do that, John.
Well, no, I was going to get to that. I don't. If I'm not going to work, I'll buy a ticket. I don't like. There's some media members that will remain nameless. That will go to games and get a credential and have no thought at all about working. They're just going to go to the game. So that was my first time I got a credential to a Mavs game since that game when Tony Romo suited up. But no, I went to 3 playoff games last year, but I didn't go like credentialed. I just went to the game as a fan. But no. Yeah. So I went there thinking like, hey, if Odell shows up, great. I'll get some content for Twitter and maybe I can turn it into a story. And if not, then I'll probably have a pretty decent seat to watch Luka Doncic and Devin Booker and company. So it was going to be a pretty good night either way for me. So I was pretty excited about that. But no, when Odell shows up, and fortunately I was in a good spot when he showed up with Parsons and Diggs. And so I was like, I'll get some video of this and let's just see if, he says something. I mean, he seems like the type of person, like I was just telling someone, if, for example, if Aaron Judge was to walk in there at that time, Aaron Judge's personality is to probably not say very much. He might say, hey, guys, or whatever. I'm not saying anything or whatever. But with Odell, you just never know. So you are going to have to keep walking because if you stop, you never know what he's going to tell someone else. Like he told Tim McMahon, what Tim McMahon asked him after we left. His plan is to sign with the Cowboys, or if he was going to sign with the Cowboys, he said that's the plan. Well, he didn't say anything like that to us, but you don't want to walk away because what if he gives a great quote and then you're not there for it? So it added to it because his group, they were going to the wrong entrance, so it took longer for them and longer for them to have to deal with us. But he seemed to genuinely be enjoying it. Like the cameras don't bother him at all. So it was fun. It is what it is. I wouldn't want to do that, every night or once a month. But, there's just certain people like that, heck, just look at when they showed him on the big screen, the way everyone was chanting OBJ. I mean, that was not like 10 people were chanting that. That was like the entire building was chanting that.
Well, your video, the initial one that you had, is now at 1.7 million views on Twitter. So you're nearing the 2 million view mark. You and Calvin Watkins, hitting that 1.5 million view mark on Twitter last night. Speaking of those receivers, is this wide receiver core as currently constructed enough to help the Cowboys get where they want to go this year?
Yeah, it is, as long as they stay relatively healthy. If you were to lose a CeeDee Lamb or a Michael Gallup for any portion of the rest of this season, I think they would be in trouble there. But where they're at right now, especially the way CeeDee and Michael have played these last couple of games and where they're trending, and then getting James Washington back. No, I think that yeah, they're not the receiving core where you have Amari Cooper with that group, but I think those two with Gallup and Lamb and what they're doing in the running game and the emergence of some of the young tight ends with obviously Dalton Schultz, I think it's more than enough. And then obviously you add it in with the defense. It's more than enough for them to reach all their goals, make a Super Bowl run. But the reason why I thought Odell was interesting with that group is because if you were to lose one of those receivers for, even if let's say it was a quarter or a half of, CeeDee, like for example in that Kansas City game last year, hits the back of his head in the end zone right before halftime, concussion. CeeDee felt good. He was ready to keep playing, but he's ruled out. So you don't have CeeDee Lamb, your best receiver for the rest of the second half, and that's a playoff game. I mean, you're going to sure hope that you have a healthy Odell Beckham at that time. But if these guys stay healthy, no, they have the weapons on offense that they can score with anybody.
We're talking to the homie Jon Machota of The Athletic. And John, I have been fascinated with the notion of a wide receiver or number one wide receiver, not even just almost like the conversation in baseball of a number one starter versus an ace. Like the idea of the number one wide receiver that forces defense to compensate, that on any given night, regardless of who's lined up against them, can be productive. Does CeeDee Lamb feel like he's entering that conversation or is in that conversation to you?
Yeah, I would say he's entering it. I don't think that I get where you're coming from, and I agree on both sides of it with the ace, number one starter, number one receiver, and then that elite number one, where, for example, for Cowboys fans, I would say there was that 3-year run where Dez Bryant was certainly on that, where he was just going to be a handful for whatever they did, and there were even times where there was 2-3 guys over there, and they still couldn't do anything, especially when they were throwing fades to him in the red zone. So there are guys like that. I wouldn't say CD's there yet, but he's trending in that direction, and he certainly has all the ability to be one of those guys. But he, like, for example, going into this season, they needed him to step into that number one for their team, over, you lose Amari Cooper, let's be honest, he was that guy, even though they looked at it as them having 3 number ones. Well, it's clearly CeeDee Lamb is that number one for this Cowboys team now. Now, is he on the elite of the elite, where I only think there might only be 4 to 5 guys in the league that are even on that level, like a Tyreek Hill or Cooper Kupp? Probably not yet, but he's heading in that direction where I could certainly see him. That should be the expectation for him. And to be honest with you, when it comes to that time, he'll probably be right about when he's going to get that next contract, and he'll probably get paid like one of those top guys.
As of an hour ago, you tweeted this out. The Cowboys have defeated their opponents by an average of 17.2 points in 2022. That's tops in the NFL. Since Dak Prescott returned in Week 7, Dallas's average margin of victory is 19.2. Aside from the specific numbers themselves, what does that tell you about this team and what they should and can be for the rest of the year?
I don't know if everyone takes it this way, but when I look at that, it's this team is good and can win a lot of games with Cooper Rush at quarterback. But with Dak Prescott at quarterback, it takes everything to another level. And we've seen that, especially since Dak, the first game or two back, I think he was still a little hesitant, wasn't completely back to himself. But where he's at now, coupled with that running game, and it just seems like everybody is starting to really trend in the right direction in terms of where this offense can go. I think you're just seeing them hitting their stride. And I don't think that they've played their best ball yet. I still think that's ahead of them, and that's the way Mike McCarthy wants this team to trend. Let's be honest. I don't know that the Cincinnati Bengals were the second best team in the NFL last year, or even the AFC's best team, but they went to the Super Bowl because they were playing their best ball at the end of the year, and it looks like they're trending in that direction again this year. But it looks like the Cowboys are doing the same. So if they can avoid any major injury setback type thing, like obviously you saw with San Francisco and Garoppolo, if they can avoid that, this offense is there to hang with anybody.
So, John, outside of injuries, I know last year, at least narrative-wise, the stumbling block for this team was physicality. Putting your prognosticator hat on, what would be the potential stumbling block for this team in this playoffs that they might need to try and avoid?
Yeah, for me, it doesn't change very much from last year. It's the penalties, and it's going against a team that could be real physical with you in terms of the run game, and you just have a sloppy tackling game where we've seen it a couple of times this year where guys are, they're just not. I'll use the Packers game as an example. They just didn't tackle as well as this Cowboys defense should tackle, and it was very clear in the locker room after that they didn't feel like they played up to that level either. And so, for the most part, they don't play like that. But let's be honest, it's the playoffs. One game, you perform like that, and you go home, and everything you work for all season, it's over with. And so that would be the two things. And then it's the penalty thing, and there's a lot that it's on them, and they have to be focused and disciplined, particularly on the pre-snap stuff. But also, it comes a little bit down to the ref crew that they have from week to week. And there's just some games where some of these refs are more involved than others, and they call some things that other crews don't. And so you don't want to get into a game in the postseason where you're going against another good opponent and you have one of those ref crews that's calling the close stuff, and that's getting you to get out of your game, and it's getting you frustrated. Those are things that I could potentially see being an issue, but because they dealt with it last year, maybe they'll be more ready for it this year, and that won't be an issue again. But those are definitely the two areas.
Last one for me before we let you get out of here, with respect to how all of this has gone down and where we are now with the Odell Beckham Jr. situation and what we've come to learn today about, his possible availability or not by the time we get to the end of the year. What has been your just overall take on how all of this has played out, given where we started and how all of this has gone to where we are now and what this could mean for the Cowboys for the rest of the year?
From my own perspective, real quick, it was that Jerry Jones and Odell Beckham are just two of the greatest marketers, promoters, whatever you want to say in sports. And so they've done a good job of keeping this of interest. You mentioned about like how many people viewed that video. People aren't viewing that video if they don't care. And Odell Beckham hasn't played in a full year, and people still care, and Jerry Jones still does enough to keep people talking about it. And so it was fascinating from my perspective the last, month or so, last few days, especially just how much interest there is that drummed up in the Cowboys. And then especially when you put in Odell Beckham into the mix, how wild that is. But it's one of those things where they don't get them, then it's one of, they kind of got to walk it back because they were so out there and so open about how much they wanted in players, front office, coaching staff. But I don't think that'll take long for them to move past. As long as Michael Gallup and CeeDee Lamb keep playing like they have the last couple of weeks, no one will really care. And to be honest with you, if they don't get Odell Beckham, I don't think that he's going to even end up playing this year. And if he does, I don't think that he's going to play at a level that it's going to make you sit there and watch games on Sunday and let's say watch the Bills and go, man, that's what the Cowboys could have had. I don't get that sense. I think that you probably won't see the best ball until next season, where that would really, be a factor. So I don't know if there's going to be if they don't get him, a lot of remorse and looking back and second guessing.
The best or most memorable thing that Jon Machota has eaten this football season is?
Most memorable thing I've eaten this football season is probably in the press box. They have they're like red velvet, like cake balls, and they just never stop bringing them back out. There's just an endless supply of them. They're just always there, and it's so difficult to turn down. They have several different kinds, and then the cookies there are amazing too. Chocolate chip cookies are great, and again, they just always, every time you go back, there's just more trays and more trays. So that's probably it. I'm a big sweets guy, so I'd say that.
Yeah, it makes it sound like you were trying to eat Jerry out of house and home. Okay,
I'll do that. That's fine.
Fantastic.
I think he's fine. I think he's doing all right.
Yeah, I think Jerry could afford it for sure.